All right, so to get started here, we're going to see how to create a simple React app with TypeScript already set up using the Create React App command line tool. Now, in case you're not familiar with React yet, or in case you haven't really worked with React too much, don't worry too much about the details here. Just know that generally with React, we won't set up projects from scratch. We'll instead use a command line tool to set up the entire project for us and just give us a good foundation that we can then use to build our actual application. So what we're going to do here first is we're going to need to make sure that we have the Create React App script installed globally. And the way that we do that is by saying npm install-g create react app. All right, so if you run this command here, what it'll do is it'll install that command line tool for you, and you'll be able to use it, as you can see, to create new React apps. Now, generally the way that this works is once we have this CLI tool installed, we just create a new React app by running npx create react app, and then we can call our app whatever we want, right? So you could say something like my React app. And what this command does by default is it uses the default React template in order to set up a new project for us. Now, this template includes very little besides just a basic script for actually running and hosting your React app and just some basic components. So what the Create React App script also allows us to do, however, is select from a series of project templates that have different setup. Now, as it happens, one of these templates that we can select is a TypeScript template, which basically just extends the default React template with adding the TypeScript package and also some basic type setup. So what we're going to do is we're just going to use that template for now, and what that'll look like is we just have to add a flag called template onto our command here, and then we're going to select the TypeScript template, right? So this is telling the Create React App command that we want to use the TypeScript template instead of the default template. And let's actually change the name of this project to something like TypeScript and React, okay? Cool, so let's hit enter, and what this is going to do is it's going to set up a new TypeScript and React project for us, and this should give us just a good starting point to see how TypeScript actually works in a React project. So let's wait for this thing to complete. And once it's complete, let's open this up in Visual Studio Code, which you can either do by doing file open and opening this new folder that's been created, or in my case here with Visual Studio Code, if you have this set up so that you can run this command, we can just say code, and then we can say TypeScript and React. Okay, so that'll open up our new project in an IDE window. And let's take a brief look at this project and how it differs from a regular React project. Well, the first thing that you'll notice here is that we have this tsconfig.json file, which isn't normally in a React project. And this contains a lot of different pieces of setup, right? This is different than what you would normally get from running tsc init in a basic project, right? You can see that first of all, we have some compiler options, and we also have this include option that says to include everything inside the source directory. And additionally, you can also see some properties that are pretty unique to React projects, such as this JSX, React JSX property, and other things like that. So let's take a look now inside this source directory. So the first thing that you'll notice here is that instead of JSX files, which is what we would have in a normal React project, we have these TSX files. Now, first of all, JSX is just the special HTML-like syntax that React uses to allow us to define the structure of interfaces. It's sort of like HTML, but with more functionality available to us. And basically, TSX files are just JSX files, right? JavaScript with this JSX syntax inside of it, but that also allow us to use TypeScript, right? So if you open up this app.tsx file, which is the top-level component in a React application, right? The app component is basically what we put all of the other components inside of. If you hover over the component itself, you'll see that this has the type of JSX.element, right? So basically, this is the fundamental type for creating interfaces in React. And in fact, if you hover over these things as well, you'll see that they have their own type JSX intrinsic elements.header. And same thing with image, paragraph tag. You'll see that these are all part of the intrinsic elements type here. So anyway, those are the main types that you'll be dealing with in a React app. And one thing that I really want you to keep in mind is that you don't really need to worry so much about what the exact types are going to be. So for example, again, if you hover over, let's say our header tag here, you're going to see that that's a pretty complex looking type name, right? It's definitely not something that you'd want to type out if you were creating, let's say, a function that could take this as an argument. So what you can actually do is if you wanted to create a function that took a React component as an argument, right? So if we were to say something like function some function, and we wanted this function to take components such as our app component as an argument, well, instead of actually finding out what that type is and putting it after this, we could actually create our own custom type here and use the type of operator to just get the type of whatever expression we're hoping to be able to pass as an argument. So for example, if we wanted to say type some component, we could just say equals type of, and then we could just pass our app component there, and that will automatically use this some component thing as an alias for whatever the type of this component is. And obviously the type here is fairly simple, so we could just type that out. But so if we wanted to get the type of something a little bit more unpleasant, like a header tag or something like that, what we could always do is just define some sort of variable like this. So we'll say let header equals, and then we'll just create some sort of header element. So we'll just say header like so. And if we now say type of header, then that allows us to create an alias for that type as well and make sure that that's the type of whatever argument gets passed to here. So now we could just use some component like that in our function, and we could do something inside of the body of the function. So that's just something to keep in mind when working with rather complex types. And this same thing goes for working with TypeScript and Node.js. Some of those types tend to be a little bit complex, such as when you're working with an Express application. Those types can be a little bit lengthy to type out on your own. So you can always just use the type of operator in order to create your own alias for that type. So anyway, that's how to set up a basic React application with TypeScript using a template. If you want to actually run this application, you can do that in the same way as you normally would just running a regular React app. And in fact, if you go into package.json, you'll see that these same scripts are here as in a regular create React app project. So we can just run something like npm run start or just npm start, and that will run our React app for us. And sure enough, that'll open that up in a browser, and that's in another window here. So let me just drag that over. And sure enough, there is our React app. So the next thing that we're going to see is how we can actually add TypeScript to an existing React app in case that's something you want to do. So that's what we'll see next.